Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Vax Talk Part 2. Tonight, we have put together an informational session on the COVID-19 vaccine, and we hope to address some of your questions and concerns. This event is brought to you by Viral Solutions and the 100 Black Men of South Metro Atlanta, and we would like to thank everyone who came together to make it happen. This evening, we will address several topics: the current status of COVID-19, the vaccines, who should get the vaccines, the distribution process for the vaccine, and can we trust the vaccines? I would like to take a moment to introduce our panel, as well as our clinical trial participants. I'm Michelle Wan, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Viral Solutions. I'm also an Associate Medical Director at Emory Decatur and Emory Hillendale, where I've practiced emergency medicine for the last several years. We have PA Ron Sanders, who is the president and co-founder of Viral Solutions. He is also an emergency medicine physician assistant with many years clinical experience and former Emory ER lead PA. We have Dr. Lamar Cochran, who is the vice president of medical affairs at Viral Solutions, and also the vice chief of emergency medicine at Emory Hillendale, where he practices emergency medicine clinically. On the clinical trial side of things, we have our heroes of the evening, Ms. Ashley Nealy, who was the Pfizer clinical trial participant, and Mr. Clifton Crawley, who is the Moderna clinical trial participant. We would like to invite our audience to submit their questions in the comments, and we will address them in the question and answer session following our panel. I also want to remind everyone to complete the survey that will be sent to you. It's a 7-question survey, and it shouldn't take you more than a couple minutes to complete. And that does give us helpful information. So please give us that feedback. I'd like to start by acknowledging the fact that the decision to get the vaccine is a very deeply personal one. And we acknowledge and we respect everyone's stance. Our hope this evening is that if you are watching, maybe you're on the fence, you're still thinking about the vaccine, you're not sure, and you're looking for some information. And it's our hope to provide you just that. To share with you how I came to my conclusion, I did get the vaccine. I made a risk-benefit analysis, and my personal decision to make the vaccine was because I chose to risk the mild side effects of the vaccine versus the risk of getting actually infected with COVID. I came to that conclusion by just what I saw every day in the ER with my patients and their families and the suffering that I was witnessing, as well as the grim statistics that we see outlined here that we've suffered through as a nation. My status as a healthcare worker went into making this decision, as well as the fact that I know that communities of color, as we have seen, are disproportionately impacted by this. So in summary, my decision was made considering not only myself, but also my family. You see my beautiful daughter here that I want to be around and be healthy for, to watch grow up and take care of. My elders in my family who I definitely care for and want to protect, bringing it back to my patients and their family members and wanting to protect them as I come in contact with them and care for them and my entire community. I see it as me doing my small step and helping us all get one step closer to normalcy. So I'm going to begin by talking about the current status of COVID-19, just to give everyone a situational update. Nationwide, since the pandemic has started, we've seen 27 million cases and over 460,000 deaths. Thankfully, we are starting to see cases declining among all age groups. The South African, Brazilian, and UK variants have all been detected here in the United States. And this remains to be seen how this will impact the number of cases, because there is data to suggest that these variants do have increased ability to be transmitted and are somewhat more contagious. Thus far, we've had 42 million vaccines administered. 1.5 million vaccinations we're averaging a day. Even with that, only less than 3% of Americans are fully vaccinated at this time, and that means having completed the entire 2-shot series. In Georgia, we've seen over 900,000 cases overall. Nearly 1.2 million Georgians have been vaccinated as of yesterday. Within the last 24 hours, our snapshot would look like this. 2,500 approximately newly confirmed cases. This is in keeping with the overall downtrend that we are seeing nationally. Georgia currently ranks number 23 in the number of cases. We've held steady since the last time we spoke last week, and we're 44th in the nation for testing. So we've actually slipped down a notch, and our number of tests conducted has actually gone down in compared to the national ranks. We are currently number 35 in the nation for vaccine administration. And if you're curious, the top 3 states are North Dakota, New Mexico, and West Virginia. We're going to transition next to talking about the vaccines, and the 2 currently available vaccines both happen to be mRNA vaccines. So what is an mRNA vaccine? A lot of people have questions about what that means, and I think the important take-home message is the mRNA, the M in the mRNA stands for messenger. And what the vaccine does is it acts like a message to your immune system. So you get the vaccine, and it gives your immune system instructions on gives your body instructions on how you produce the spike protein. A spike protein is what's found on the outside of the coronavirus. And your body, in addition to following the instructions to create the spike protein, it also recognizes the spike protein as a foreign invader or something that should not be there. And it produces antibodies that then seek and destroy the spike protein. And how it works to protect you against COVID is if your body were to then see the actual spike protein with the coronavirus, if it tries to infect you, it recognizes that same spike protein as an invader, and your antibodies seek and destroy it before it's able to infect you and you develop symptoms and develop COVID-19. So the first of the 2 mRNA vaccines that we're going to discuss is the Pfizer vaccine. So the Pfizer product is 2 doses, and it is separated by 3 weeks. You do achieve 95% effectiveness against symptomatic COVID based on the data that we've seen from the Pfizer vaccine. You have about half of that immunity 10 days after your first shot, and the full 95% protective benefit 7 days after the booster shot. It does require extreme cold temperature and some challenges with transportation that Ron is going to address later in his talk. Next is the Moderna, which is the second of the 2 mRNA vaccines. This is 2 doses separated by 4 weeks. You do have 94% effective protection against symptomatic COVID. It also requires freezers, but a little bit less extreme with Pfizer, still very challenging for transportation. Both of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, the data that I just quoted is based on the first and the second dose being the same type. The take-home message there is that you want to make sure that you try to get the same dose, the same vaccine product type for the first and second dose. You can do that by ensuring that you keep your vaccine card so that you know, based on the sticker and the label that's placed on it, which product you got, you know what date you're supposed to go for your second shot. The CDC has released guidelines for exceptional situations, and what that means is if there is an instance where you're not sure what product you received the first time, you can't find your card, there's no way for you to verify it, or you are simply not able to find the same product for the second dose that you got for the first one, instead of skipping that booster dose, it is recommended that you go ahead and get a second product of whichever vaccine is available, as long as you have waited 28 days between 2 doses. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is not yet available, but a couple of updates since we spoke last week, just to kind of review how this vaccine works. It is not an mRNA vaccine like the Pfizer and Moderna. It uses an adenovirus, which is basically a common cold virus, a weakened version of that virus, to carry those same instructions on how to make the spike protein. You get 1 shot versus 2. It's a lot easier to storage because of room temperature. And the last time that we spoke, that one, we were thinking that possibly by the end of February, early March, we could see it in arms. Just last Thursday, Johnson & Johnson applied for the emergency use authorization application through the FDA. So the next step in the process is the FDA has a vaccine committee that is going to review the data and make a recommendation, and that could happen as early as February 26th. So we should hear an update on that, and we could hear it as soon as the end of this month. The efficacy for the Johnson & Johnson has been a bit lower against moderate and severe COVID than we've seen in the Pfizer and Moderna, just 66% there. I think, it's important to note that that is a result of the fact that was conducted with poor performance in the South African portion of the trial, where 95% of the patients did have the South African variant. However, even with that 66%, which is a lower rate of protection against moderate and severe COVID, we do see that 85% protection at 28 days and 100% protection against death. Definitely still overall good outcome from that trial as well. The others, we talked about this last week as well. The Oxford AstraZeneca has been approved and is continuing to be used in the UK. An update there is it's been suspended in South Africa because of questionable or poor performance rather in the South African strain. The Johnson & Johnson product, again, pending emergency use authorization. So we'll look out to see what happens after that FDA vaccine committee meeting and the others that are still pending. So the couple of unknowns, again, how do these vaccines protect us against asymptomatic carriage? We don't yet know, once you're vaccinated, even though we have great data to suggest that you're protected against severe COVID and death, we still don't know, can you still carry the vaccine and be an asymptomatic carrier and infect others who are not yet vaccinated? We have seen, question now with some data to suggest that there are some variants that may have reduced or have some ability to still have symptoms even against people who have been vaccinated. But what we don't know is still future variants, how they're going to perform against the currently available vaccine. So those are all questions. And it continues to drive home the message that we need to ensure that we continue to socially distance and wear masks even after we've been vaccinated. So next up, we will have PA Ron Sanders, our president and co-founder, who is going to discuss who should get the vaccine.
Thanks, Michelle. How you doing? How's everybody doing? My name is Ron Sanders, president and co-founder, and I'm going to start the topic about who should get the vaccine. So who should get the vaccine? Everybody who's eligible should receive the vaccine. It helps, as Michelle stated, it helps protect against death and hospitalizations, which puts a strain on our healthcare system. But however, everybody cannot get the vaccine right now because it's a limited supply. And depending on state to state, there are different categories in which you are eligible to get the vaccine. I will discuss more importantly Georgia because that's the state we reside in. Currently, we are in phase 1A. And phase 1A incorporates all your high risk individuals. It's healthcare workers, people in long-term health facilities, age over 65, and people with a lot of comorbidities who has the highest likelihood to die from COVID-19. The next phase that will open up, we're unsure when, but it would be phase 1B. That would be mostly our essential workers that are not in healthcare. And essential workers are defined as people in transportation, social services, people in water and wastewater, childcare and energy, things that you need to operate the economy and for society to move from its day-to-day events. 1C is lower on the list. However, this is for individuals 16 to 64. I want to point out that only Pfizer is actually indicated to vaccinate individuals 16 and above, not the Moderna vaccine at this time. And that's for people that have that do not meet criteria of 1A and 1B, but however have very high risk comorbidities. That's HIV, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Then eventually it would get to the general public where we are able to, vaccinate the masses and hopefully be able to inoculate and make herd immunity. Distribution process, it varies from vaccine to vaccine. The easiest one would be Johnson & Johnson, which should be on the market hopefully soon and will help give us greater access. However, the two that are currently on the market they bring us challenges in reference to those logistics and storage capabilities. Supply chain, of course, begins with the manufacturers, the CDC, provides guidance on who should receive the vaccine when demand is high, which it is right now, which puts us in that category of 1A. State and local governments, they receive a specific number, and based on the most recent data for the state of Georgia, Pfizer has an allocation of 761,000 roughly. Total's been shipped to 678,000. Moderna has about an allocation of roughly 1.1 million near, but what's been shipped is 1 million. And the total administered in the state of Georgia to date, as of yesterday, was roughly 1.2 million. So the handling for Pfizer is probably the most challenging. You have to have 2 doses, and it's shipped in containers, and the shelf life can be extended if it is placed in the freezer of -80, and it can be extended for at least 6 months. However, it is shipped in thermal shippers, which you can store in those shipping containers for 30 days. However, you have to replace the dry ice every 5 days, which of course can bring its challenges. Once it's refrigerated, you have about 5 days when it's refrigerated under normal temperatures. And once it's mixed, you have 6 hours to administer the vaccine. Moderna, while not as challenging, still brings its challenges. It is they're shipped in multi-dose vials. They're stored frozen between -25 and -15. And then they can be stored in refrigerated temperatures for up to 30 days. And then once punctured, the vials can be stored between 8 and 25 degrees Celsius for up to 12 hours. But remember, you cannot refreeze either one once you have thawed the vaccines.
All right, thank you so much, Ron. Very helpful information. Quite the challenge that poses for someone who is interested in administering those vaccines. So the next topic that we're going to cover is going to be, can we trust the COVID-19 vaccine? And that also is going to be presented to you by PA Ron Sanders. Oh, actually, sorry, excuse me. Can we trust the COVID-19 vaccine? That's actually Dr. Cochran. I misspoke.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Dr. Cochran. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. So yes, my name is Lamar Cochran. So I got the all-important topic of, can we trust the COVID-19 vaccine? At first, I'll be honest with you, the answer I had was, I don't know. I had to go do my own research. I talked to colleagues who are into research and can tell me a little bit more about the vaccine. But at first, I just wasn't sure. But I can assure you now, after doing my research, talking with professionals in the research area, that you can absolutely trust the vaccine. Although it was developed at a high pace, it did not compromise the safety. It went to the same governing bodies as all vaccinations, all drugs go through, and that's going to be the FDA. It did not skip any of those steps at all. All vaccines must be approved by the FDA. And they adhere to the agency's strict research protocols, and that's exactly what this vaccination did. You'd be like, okay, well, how did you develop this so fast? Usually it takes years to get something into a drug into, or a vaccination into the markets. How did it get done so fast? So I'm gonna explain to you a little bit about it. A lot of it comes down to production and the way they approach getting this drug to the market. So typically, this is a busy slide, but I'll walk you through it. So typically, a pharmaceutical company comes up with an idea. They develop a drug, and it then goes through the process of getting vetted. It goes through the trials of stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 trials. It goes through a review committee of the FDA. It goes to the advisory committee. Only after that has been approved will the pharmaceutical company go into development phases. What's different about the COVID-19 vaccine, the development phase started at the same time while the trials were going on. So once they did get approved through the governing bodies, that drug was ready, the vaccination was ready to get to market right away because they already started the development stage. Typically, this would not happen with pharmaceutical companies would not do this because it's a huge risk, spending all these dollars creating a vaccination or a drug, whatever it is, before getting approved, and say it got to the FDA body and they said that, no, it's not safe, it's not effective, they wasted all those dollars. What the federal government did, they gave the pharma, because they mitigated that risk for the pharmaceutical companies by giving them federal dollars to go ahead and start the development process so that things get moving. In addition to all that, all hands were on deck. This did not have to wait for other medications, other vaccinations that were already in the process. All that was halted, and all decks were on hand to get this vaccination to market. It went through the phase 1, the phase 2, the phase 3 trials. So you have phase 1, which consists of, is this medication safe? They figure out the dosing is a very small number of patients that they use for this. They make sure it's safe. You have the phase 2 trials that maybe have up to like 100 people that they tested on and make sure it's effective. Then you go to the phase 3 trials, which you get tens of thousands of patients that are enrolled in these studies and to see if it's safe. And that's what this went through. So it definitely feel comfortable. You also might ask, you know what? You're thinking that, you know what? I still really don't trust the government, especially when, as African American, you have to think of the Tuskegee trial with the syphilis and penicillin. Some things that are different with that. That was going through the clinical phases, and we're actually in this. This has already been proven. Actually, has gone through clinical phases. With the Tuskegee trial, they enrolled just one demographic, which was Black males, which is typically not a very good study, because you have an adequate good study. You want to make sure you're hitting all demographics, because we are made up genetically different. So you want to make sure you're hitting different areas there. And even after that study, they put in governing bodies over these researchers. So it's not just the researchers that involved, but they have somebody that's not involved looking at the study and make sure it's performed in a safe and ethical way. And this, again, the vaccination that we know about now, it went through all those various steps. So we talk about the safety profile. Are there any side effects? To be honest with you, yes, there are some side effects. With any medication that you get, even medication over the counter, medication that you would not think twice about taking, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, all those have a side effect profile. It comes down to the risk benefit of those side effects. So some of the common side effects that you will find with the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine are going to be pain at the site of injection, fever, headache, body aches. What does this mean? This means that the vaccination is working. Your body is making antibodies to fight off any future exposures to this. So those are the good things about it. You know it's working. And the good thing is these side effects last for maybe 1 or 2 days. And typically most people that have gotten the vaccination, they can work through these symptoms. There's nothing that is debilitating. So when it came down to, for myself, like, okay, what are the risk benefits? Am I comfortable with the risk of the vaccine? Are there enough benefits of the vaccine? Or do I just want to not get it at all? So being as an emergency medicine physician, I've seen the worst of COVID. I've seen the morbidity that it caused. I've seen the mortality that it caused. And then on the flip side, I see the risk of the vaccine. 1 or 2 days of fevers, chills, headaches, I can still work throughout the day. And so for me, it came down to, it was a no-brainer. With the research trials that it went through, with the minimal side effect profile, and knowing that this could get us back to some normalcy, eventually getting off masks. We're not there yet. Eventually being able to spend more time with family and friends. And so that's why I made the decision to get the vaccine, and I got the shot. And to be honest with you, if someone were to ask me, like, hey, would you recommend I get a shot? I would say absolutely yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cochran. All right, so next up we have, I always refer to them as the real heroes. We have our clinical trial participants. And first up, we have Ms. Ashley Nealy, who was the Pfizer clinical trial participant, who's going to share with us her experience.
Nice. Thank you, Dr. Wan. As she mentioned, my name is Ashley, participant in the Pfizer trial. Just wanted to let you know a little bit about my story and why I decided to participate. So I was watching a congressional hearing one day, and Dr. Fauci had mentioned that there could not be a vaccine produced without African Americans involved in the trial. And I'm well aware of the long and painful history that African Americans have had with medical racism, as long ago as Tuskegee experiment, to things that we still see today with maternal mortality. And so I knew that it was going to be a challenge to get African Americans enrolled. So I figured if I could help lend myself to being part of this process and make sure that it's safe and equitable for everyone, that I want to do that. My biggest fear was that if we didn't have enough African Americans enrolled in the trial, that we could find out later that it wasn't as effective on us, even though we're the ones that are suffering the most from COVID-19. So I originally signed up on a site that Dr. Fauci mentioned, COVID-19 Prevention Network, to see if I would be eligible for a trial. And that site, they pretty much put you in a database, and then different clinical trial sites can contact you whenever they have openings. I didn't hear anything back, so I saw a Facebook ad about a couple of weeks later, and it said they were enrolling people for a COVID-19 vaccine clinical trial. And so I clicked on the link and signed up, and then I got a call about 2 hours later. So during that time, they called me. They did a quick screening about making sure I was healthy, asking if I had any medical conditions, and then they said I was eligible for the trial. I was really excited at that point. Of course, I thought I was going to, get able to get the vaccine and help make history. But then I started to kind of doubt myself after I talked to my friends and family. They were a little hesitant about participating in something like this. They were asking, why would I want to do something like this, especially with the new mRNA vaccine, which hadn't been used in humans before? Why would I want to put something experimental into my body? So I just had to go back to the informed consent document that I was sent, which confirmed that it was a company, was Pfizer, that was doing it, which gave me a little bit of reassurance since I was aware of that company and I've taken a lot of their products before. And then I had to go back and read about what everything that could go wrong. And at that time, the only thing they had noticed in the previous phases of the trial was that I could just get some flu-like symptoms, and that was something I was willing to risk. So just to tell you a little bit about how the clinical trial works. Whenever you go on the first day, they take your height and weight and vitals, and then they also go over your any medication that you're taking. That's something really important that they ask you to bring them with you. If you are a woman like me during a clinical trial, you're not allowed to get pregnant during a trial, so they actually have you take a pregnancy test, and once that comes back negative, you're able to proceed. I tell people the worst part of the clinical trial experience for me was actually getting the COVID test. So if you have not had one, you're lucky. But if you've had one before and had one administered by someone else, it can be the most painful part. So then after they do your COVID test, they draw your blood, and that's how to get the baseline if you've had any previous antibodies before, any exposure to COVID. And then they take you into another room where you have to download an app. And on this app, it asks you a question every week if you have any COVID-19 symptoms. And if you ever do, then you have to take a test, and they will come and collect that sample from you. And then that's how they're able to determine how many people actually contract COVID during the clinical trial or not. And then finally, you go into the room to get your shot. So most people may not know that a lot of clinical studies are double-blinded studies. So that means that they do not tell you whether you've actually gotten the vaccine or not. So there's about 50-50 chance that you could get the vaccine or a placebo, which is just salt water. So I don't technically know yet if I got the vaccine. I'm hoping that I did, because I did have some side effects, which I'll describe now. So after you take the shot, they make you stay for about 30 minutes just to make sure that you didn't have an allergic reaction. So that's the observation period, which is the same if you were to get it today. And then I was fine the rest of that day. The next morning when I woke up, it was a little hard to get out of bed. So I had a lot of fatigue. I was really tired. I had some body aches, sweating, some chills. And then by the time I woke up the following morning, all my side effects were gone. But I didn't have those same side effects on the booster shot. So since then, I've just been trying to use my platform to let people know that people that look like us have participated in these trials. We want to make sure it is equitable and safe, and that we can definitely trust this vaccine and trust the process and all the things that have been put in place since we've had injustices done to us in the past. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you for your bravery, both in participating in the clinical trial and also for your courage in sharing your experience with us. It's because of people like you that we have these vaccines. So thank you so very much for sharing that with us.
Yes, thank you.
All right, next up, we have Mr. Clifton Crawley, who's going to share with us his experience in the Moderna clinical trial. Hi, Clifton.
Hey everyone, can you hear me? Oh, let me turn
Yes, sir.
All right, got my camera on. The Moderna trial. Yeah, I'm a licensed medical social worker at both CHOA and at Grady. And at the time, Grady was packed. It was about August, July. Grady was packed, and I was working at CHOA one day, and you get messages saying that there needs to be more minority participation in some of the trials, and Moderna was doing the trial through Emory. Well, what made me decide to do it was I had a 13-year-old who passed away from COVID at CHOA, one of my patients, and it occurred to me that all the kids that had passed were Black, and particularly Black boys, and this discrepancy and the fact that we were dying at a much faster rate from COVID than other ethnic groups, other groups, period. Just like, I said, I'm enough is enough. And I decided to participate because I knew that if there was a vaccine, I wanted to make sure that there was enough Black people, Black men specifically, that participated so that we know if the vaccine was effective, as effective in our population as it would be in the other ethnic groups. So I participated in Moderna's trial, and I think Moderna reached up to 30% minority participation rate. So that's something that separates Moderna too from the other clinical trials. Similar to Ashley, the whole process is very similar. You go through the drug screen, where blood screening they go through. They do quick questionnaire. You take a swab test, and then they juice you up. And afterwards, I had no side effects. So all I had was a sore shoulder the next day. I took both in September, had no side effects. And it turns out, because I'm in the medical profession, they unbinded me back in January to see if I actually got the vaccine or if I got placebo. And it turns out I did get the vaccine. So I've been vaccinated since September and have not had any issues, have not gotten COVID, have not had any issues. I didn't even know I had the vaccine. I thought maybe I had placebo because I didn't have any issues. So that's all I can say on that. Since then, they do chronic checks to make sure that you don't have any symptoms. You do it through an app just to text, check in on you. They call me all the time. They let me know if I ever get sick. They have an army of medical professionals ready to assist me if I ever do get sick. But I have not gotten sick, so I haven't had any issues in that regard. As before, other people were saying, where you have a Mims, who was the father of gynecology, who experimented on Black women without anesthesia, where you have Henrietta Lacks, who got her genes taken from her, and they created a whole vast number of treatments for people for diseases, and then whether it be Tuskegee. I understood all of those. I understand anyone's hesitation when it concerns vaccines, but I would say this: instead of following the guy on YouTube or on a social media meme, speak to the people who live it, who work it, who studied it, who are professionals, who you can trust the most. And if that's a Black and brown person, ask them if they've done the research. Do they understand it? Did they get the vaccine themselves? Because most medical professionals have been offered the vaccine at this time, and listen to them. I don't understand why you would listen to someone that you don't know, don't trust, and have no history or no professional experience in vaccinations and immunology or immunization, or any other medical field. So trust the people that know the research and know the medication. And that's what I did when I took mine. Moderna was developed by a Black woman. I believe her name was Kinsey Corbett, Dr. Kinsey Corbett. And she's a part of the National Health Institute, and in conjunction with Moderna, and they created the Moderna vaccine. She was a part of the research that helped create the Moderna vaccine. So I trust my medical professionals. If something happens, it's in God's hands. But I don't believe anything will happen. I haven't had any issues. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Clifton, so much for sharing your experience and for your courage also. I'm so happy to hear you didn't have any side effects and that you're still going strong. Awesome. And all very good points, great recommendations. So thank you for sharing your perspective.
No, thank you guys. And I'm answering any questions anyone has.
All right. I think we'll take you up on that in just a few moments here. Okay, so we would just like to thank a few folks. We'd like to say thank you to the DeKalb and Fulton Hospital Authority, as well as President Vaughn of the 100 Black Men of South Metro Atlanta and everyone from Viral Solutions who came together to make this happen. I think that we are ready to get to our question and answer session. I just want to give everyone a quick reminder to please do complete your 7-question survey that will be sent to you, as that information will be very helpful for us. We do have a few questions on deck if we would like to bring back our panel presenters and our clinical trial participants. Hi, Dr. Cochran.
Hello.
Hi, Ron. Hi, Ashley. Hi, Clifton. All right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
And I can hear you guys perfectly. Wonderful. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and start with questions. You guys ready? You up for the task?
Yes.
Okay. So question 1, with Moderna and Pfizer, it appears that boosters are needed to handle the new variants and strains. How concerned are you that as new variants develop, additional boosters are needed? Ron, would you like to take that one?
Yes. So whenever a virus has the ability to jump from host to host in the population, especially when it's running pretty rampant like COVID-19 is, every time it copies itself, it's natural that it creates mutations. And with those mutations can bring variants, which can be either more infectious, more lethal, or not as infectious, not as lethal. And the variants and the mutations that are not as lethal, they end up working their way out of the population versus the ones that are more lethal and able to spread from host to host will become the dominant strain. How concerned am I? I will put it at a 5 out of 10. If we can get this under control very quickly, then we can minimize how much these variants are changing on a day-to-day basis. So I think more boosters will be needed down the road. That is still a question out there that's up for debate among all the experts. But I do have some concern about the variants. That's why I think the importance of getting the vaccine and bringing the viral load in the population down is highly, highly very important. Yes,
excellent points. Ron, this other question kind of goes hand in hand with that first one. I hate to pick on you, but do you mind answering the second one too? Mm-hmm. Will we ever reach a point where additional boosters are not needed because we are in what is considered a safe zone?
This is just my personal theory, and COVID-19 has been my life for the past 10 months. When the outbreak first happened, I was hand in hand with Lamar and Michelle in the same emergency department fighting this virus. But if you study all the COVID-19 viruses, 7 total, the most deadly ones you have MERS, SARS-1, and then SARS-2, which is COVID-19. And there's 4 like seasonal coronaviruses that cause the common cold, those alpha coronaviruses. If you look amongst all 6 that we know pretty well that we studied, not included COVID-19, the average immunity is about 1 to 3 years. That's the average immunity. So no no coronavirus gives lifetime immunity. So with that being said, I foresee it being a seasonal thing that you would probably have to get yearly vaccinations like the flu to keep it under control. But that's the goal here. We're trying to get it to where we get it under control, where you're not having the hospitals full and the emergency departments full and people are dying at a high rate. If we can get it to where we have it mitigated, where the death toll is pretty minimum, I think that's the ultimate goal. My fear, and I think I may be right here, is that this is probably here to stay, likely forever. Hopefully I'm wrong, but that's my theory. But the goal now is to get as many people vaccinated and get the viral load down so we don't have the death tolls that we're having, where we're almost at 500,000 people dead. Hopefully we can get that to like in the teens of thousands yearly.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. All right, our next question is, once I take the vaccine, can I give the virus to others? And I think it looks like it's a two-part question, and can I give it to others if I've had COVID in the past? So I kind of touched on this, so I'll take the first part of that. So we don't yet know, if you've gotten the vaccine, if you can pass it to others. We're not sure yet about asymptomatic carriage. So, definitely want to make sure that you continue, as of right now, to mask and distance. And if you've had it in the past, once you have completed your isolation period of 10 days after your first positive test, if you are if all your symptoms are improving, and if you've had at least 24 hours pass with no fever, then you are no longer able to pass COVID. So I guess that question of if you've had it in the past, once you've cleared your isolation, you're no longer able to pass it along to others. Does anyone have anything else to add to that before we move on to the next question? All right.
I would also kind of say as well, that's why it's still recommended that even after you get the vaccination, to still wear a mask since it is unknown. Don't just think that you get the vaccination and you can go without mask and be free, because we still don't exactly know if you can still be a carrier and pass that on. So you want to be mindful of that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Cochran. I have read that people are dying after getting the vaccine. Is this true?
I can speak on that a little bit. So overall, no, that's what the clinical trials were for. You have the minor reactions that a lot of us talked about. Some people do have what we call anaphylactic reaction, and that's typically when you might have difficulty breathing, or it might affect your blood pressure. And that's usually when you get a medication called epinephrine to kind of help reverse that, along with some other antihistamines. But overall, the vaccination causing death, no. The misconception can be if you get that first dose of vaccination, you are not 100% vaccinated, or at least 95% vaccinated. So you can still get the virus, and it can cause morbidity, and unfortunately it can cause mortality. And again, that comes with getting the vaccine and using safe guidelines with wearing the mask, social distancing, don't get in large crowds. So you want to make sure that. I would say no, that it does not cause death, but people that do get that first dose can still contract the virus, and you can still get morbidity and mortality from it.
Yes, definitely very important to continue to mask and to take all your precautions afterwards. Does it matter what vaccine you take, since Johnson & Johnson does not have the high efficacy like Moderna or Pfizer? And the follow-up question from that same audience member, how soon will the Johnson & Johnson be online? I'll take the second part of that question. We think possibly the end of February or early March, depending on the FDA Vaccine Committee's review and recommendation. Ron, do you want to speak to the efficacy? I know you like the vaccine efficacy and kind of the strains. Do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I'll take that. So I like to start that by saying that because something is not 100% does not mean that you should not be trying to take that preventive measure. I mean, mask as a layer of protection, even cloth mask gives you 27 to 40% protection. Social distancing gives you a layer of protection. Sanitizing gives you a layer of protection. Testing itself gives you a layer of protection, and the vaccine itself gives you another layer of protection. So even if it's 95% versus 55%, I mean, that's if I had to say, hey, I lined up 100 people, and if I gave them something that gives them a 50% chance of living, that means I'm gonna save 50% of people. I think that's a success right there. So any vaccine you get your hands on, I think is absolutely worth taking it if it's gonna give you a chance of surviving, of course.
Right. It's important to note that the ones that are being brought to market, the trials that are being applied for emergency use authorization, it is because even if they have had lower rates of preventing symptoms, they still have been proven to have very good outcomes in preventing deaths and severe morbidity and mortality from COVID. Have the labs begun any clinical trials on children or even teens?
Say it again, Michelle.
Have the labs begun have there been any clinical trials on children or any teens?
Yeah, we're currently doing, so when we discuss teens, I want to make clear that the Pfizer vaccine that is currently approved is indicated for people 16 and above. So you get the later end of the teen years with the Pfizer vaccine right now. However, there's studies going on with Moderna and Pfizer to get approval, or let me specify, EUA for 12 to 15. Hopefully we have those studies by July and we're able to start administering to the children by early fall. And then for the younger children, we should have studies that come out by the end of this year, early next year, and hopefully by next spring, we're vaccinating the younger kids also. I know kids get missed a lot in this, COVID-19 pandemic about, from being at risk, but they definitely can have like very bad, outcomes from COVID-19. I've actually seen this myself. So it's very important that we do get these vaccines on the market to help protect our kids and our teachers, of course.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked about this question earlier. Ron, you actually addressed this with the question of whether we'll have to get a shot every year. I think it looks like very much yes. Another question, this actually was something we didn't get to touch a lot on the last week. Please touch on the different variants of COVID and why our current vaccines do not have the high efficacy to control the different mutated strains.
I can kind of touch on that. So it comes down to, how does this vaccination work? So essentially what you're getting in the body so for the mRNA, it's sending a message to the cell, make this protein, and Dr. Juan touched on this earlier, make this protein that's on the surface of the coronavirus that we currently know about. So that, and the vaccination gets in the body, it goes to the cells like, hey, duplicate this protein. And it takes that protein and it puts it on the outside of the cell. And your body's immune system recognizes that specific protein that we know is on the coronavirus, and it makes antibodies, and those antibodies fight that virus off. And so if that virus gets exposed, if your body gets exposed to it, it sees that protein that was on the coronavirus and it can attack it right away. If you get a variant of that, it might be different than that protein. So although you got that vaccination, it exposes the protein, and you get a variant where it mutates and your body gets exposed to one of those variants, those antibodies it made, it might not recognize as readily, or it might not be as effective as attacking it. And so that's why you'll hear that some of the current vaccinations might not be as effective against the variants. That's because that protein on the surface might be a little bit different because it mutated just a little bit. But even with the variants that are out there, it's been shown to be effective and also can still decrease the hospitalizations and decrease the morbidity and mortality of those variants.
Thanks, Dr. Cochran. Great explanation. Another way that I think the variants have called into question the contagiousness is they tend to become more efficient in making the spike protein as well. So, all of the coronavirus makes the spike protein. That's what makes it, makes the vaccines work. But some of the variants and strains are becoming more and more efficient in making the spike protein, as well as changing the shape of it to make it harder, like Dr. Cochran was saying, for the antibodies to fit and to attach and attack. So lots of different ways that the strains can kind of affect both the ability to transmit the virus as well as the way that the vaccines work against it. All right. Next question is for the trial volunteers. So for Ashley and Clifton, will you both participate in future trials? And if so, why?
Sure. I definitely will. I think for this clinical trial itself, I think we might be in here for a while. I have heard that Pfizer is actually going to test asymptomatic spread, which is really important because we want to make sure that once you get vaccinated, that you can't still transmit it to anyone else. And then another reason why I would participate is because I've seen what happens when we don't have enough African-American participation in clinical trials. We've had this with other vaccines, such as the HPV vaccine, and that there were not enough Black women in those trials, so that we found out after it came to market that it didn't actually work on the same type of HPV that African American women. So if there's ever a need for healthy volunteers for clinical trials going forward, I definitely will sign up and participate.
For me, it depends. Of course, this is a global pandemic, and it'll affect African Americans in a very unique way. So that lured me to want to participate in the trials. I wouldn't be opposed to it. It's not something that's on forth of mind, so it's not something that I'm just thinking about doing consistently. But if necessary, if I do feel that there's a need that is there's avoided, I would definitely probably participate in certain trials. Sure.
All right. Thank you both. And I'm just seeing if there are any other questions. I don't see any other ones.
While you're waiting for questions, Michelle, I just want to take a second to thank Ashley and both Clifton. Like, you guys really paved the way. I think you definitely have more courage than what I, have. I mean, you guys took the first steps to like really help bring this to market and save a lot of lives in the process. I think that, your contribution to helping in this pandemic is probably the most important versus any other thing that, Viral Solutions could have done, as testing or potentially bringing the vaccine. Without you in this pandemic is just not possible. So thank you again.
I second that, definitely.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you guys for working on the front lines. I know how important it is for healthcare workers to be on the front line, particularly in Black communities, where oftentimes we are marginalized and we don't have the resources for adequate healthcare. So for you guys to step out on your own private time and do these panels, as well as go into the communities to service our people, I salute y'all for that. That is something that's a big need, and that is how we will have to tackle the virus in our community, is that we're going to have to step out and go into these communities and do it ourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a couple more questions that are being slid in the panel on the comment section. Panel, are you open to take a couple more questions?
Many as you got, hit me.
All right. So this seems to be a popular topic because we keep circling back to this. How long do the vaccines last in your body, and will we have to get a shot every year?
Everything's, as I answered earlier, a lot of this is all theory. Right now, the consensus is about 4 months is where you're pretty much safe. With most experts saying you have at least a year where you have some protection. I lean more towards the year just because of my knowledge of just coronaviruses in general, and the average immunity, like I said earlier, is about 1 to 3 years. So my professional guess and judgment and theory is at least 1 year.
Okay. Thanks, Ron. How high is my risk of side effects if I have pre-existing conditions? So Dr. Cochran, would you like to address this one, since this sort of falls under side effects?
Sure. So the pre-existing conditions, such as I would say some of the common ones, hypertension and diabetes, or anything like any other heart problems that you might have, your risk of the side effects do not go up based on your comorbidities, but your risk of having a worse outcome, increased morbidity, increased mortality when you contract the coronavirus are much higher. So it's suggested that even with your comorbidities, you should definitely get the vaccination. It's really only area where it's caution is if you had previous reactions to vaccinations, particularly severe ones. Others are if you got the first vaccination, you had a pretty severe reaction, you might want to reconsider at that point. But there's regarding comorbidities, it does not increase your side effects, and it's highly recommended that you get those vaccinations.
Thanks, Dr. Cochran, for clarifying that. I know a lot of people have questions about the comorbidity, so thanks for clarifying that it actually is suggested you get it because it's protective for those who have comorbidities. When will the population under 65 years old be eligible for the vaccine?
Depends on the rollout. The quicker we get it out, the more we can vaccinate above 65. We can get into 1B and 1C and then hit the rest of the population. I mean, timelines have obviously shifted. Under the old administration, we should have had 20 million doses done by the end of December. And that didn't quite happen, right? But it's a moving target. I'm learning from just trying to bring the vaccine to the African-American community. It is a very tall order. It's a very tall task, like from having to, negotiate with logistic companies how to store the vaccine and the security of the vaccine and get cameras, and how do you get it from point A to point B without it thawing and going bad, and you have a certain time window in which you give it to the patient. And what if you don't give out all the vaccine and you wasted a lot of vaccine? It's just it's hard, it's difficult, so getting back to your question, Michelle, I foresee us at least getting to 1B, hopefully within the next month, but it's very dependent on the rollout. There is no exact timetable for it. So
that's right. Big element of uncertainty with a lot of this. Here's a really interesting question. I think anyone could answer this. We've talked about this in one way or another at some point this evening. Why should I trust the government or the FDA? They have lied to us before and attempted to cover up the Tuskegee experiment.
Huge. I don't know if anybody else wants to answer.
Well, I'll try to give us a good answer best I can. The Tuskegee experiment was exposed, and one of the things is that they never gave a vaccine. They just didn't treat the gentleman with syphilis. So, and I think the doctor said before that was dealing with a specific population of individuals, African-American males, which is a ridiculous study in itself, because it doesn't have a full scope of people. This is a global pandemic, meaning the world, the entire world. There are vaccines from China that's coming out. There are vaccines from India that's coming out. There's vaccine in Britain that's coming out. There's vaccines here in the US that are already out, and some more to come. So it's not just a government vaccine. It is a worldwide pandemic, meaning the world is suffering from it. So everyone is involved in this. So it's not just Black people or Black men. It's everyone involved. And it is a vaccine that is given out that is available to everyone of age, race, gender, or nationality. So that is a huge difference in what happened in Tuskegee.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, Clifton, I also want to just comment that think about what we're setting ourselves up for as African Americans, right? Like, if we say we don't trust the government, we're not going to take the vaccine, we are going to be setting ourselves up for an epidemic within a pandemic, where our Caucasian counterparts, they're going to get vaccinated, they're going to be protected, they're going to be able to go back to normal, and then our personal ignorance of not getting the vaccine and our mistrust is going to leave us to still carry the death burden and, still die by the masses. So, I mean, it's kind of like, I'm not going to say pick your poison, because I don't feel that the other side of the fence is poison, because I think the science and data is there. But that is one thing I do fear, is that if we don't educate ourselves and we don't really trust our, African-American leaders and our physicians who look like us, then we're setting ourselves up for a, death toll that may not end anytime soon, when our Caucasian counterparts would be able to, go back to normal. So just think about that. I think that is the other side of the coin. If you stay 40, 50 years ago with the Tuskegee experiment versus what's going on now, because the world has changed. We've had a Black president since then. We've made a lot of strides. It's a different world. So,
and furthermore, going off what he said, 60% of the vaccines are going to white people. We're only getting 5% currently, according to CNN. I've watched. Only 5% of the vaccines are coming to us. We are being marginalized out of receiving the vaccine currently. So we are setting ourselves up for more death. And this is it fights against the very reason I even volunteered to be a part of the vaccine, because I want Black people to not die. And I want Black people to thrive in the future. Understand that to reach herd immunity, we have to have 95% of those vaccinated. And right now, we're not even close. And if we're not participating in the vaccine, that means we're getting further exposed. And then you top that off just here within the city of being wide open, where you can go to the club and hang out and get a beer and a drink and go home with COVID and give it to your grandma and go home and give it to your loved ones. I very much so am afraid of what's going to happen to us as a people if we don't turn the tide of what's going on currently. Earlier last year, when the outbreak first occurred, we had upwards of 95 to 97% of the deaths that reached in Georgia were Black people. And a lot of that was due to our own ignorance. We had churches still holding funerals. We had churches still, having service, cookouts, and everything else. And people were dying. And we're still taking it as a joke. This is very serious, y'all. And until we get everyone on board, we're going to continue to see this level of death. Grady is full, and a lot of that is full with us. And again, I haven't had a death yet that's been a white person in my Choa. Now we've had in Grady, but at Choa, I haven't seen a white person die yet of COVID. I've seen some Black kids die. So what are we going to do here? We're going to just sit down and suffer and be worried about the government, the boogeyman, or are we going to actually tackle these issues that are affecting us? We're already marginalized. We can't marginalize ourselves.
Excellent points. Excellent points. Thank you for that. This question, I think, is very salient and germane to that last one. So I think I'll just, we have another question, but I'll go to this one and come back to that one. Why is it taking so long to get the vaccines to the Black and brown community? So many people don't have computers to register or cars to travel across town.
Resources. Just lack resources. Many of us don't have insurance. Many of us don't have transportation. I don't know why it's not going to Black populations. They're supposed to go to Black populations, and it turns out white people waiting in line in Black communities. So we have to figure it out. Not like the doctors, they're saying that they're going out into the community and they're going to try to figure out ways to distribute it into our communities. But yeah, there is a very big resource on discrepancy and a very big access discrepancy. So that's my answer to that. I can't really give you any other answer to that.
Dr. Cochran or Ron, anything to, definitely we see the resource discrepancies every day in our practice. What are your thoughts on that?
I wish I had a better answer really for you. Our company, Vital Solutions, that we're a part of, we have been approved to deliver the vaccine and to deliver in our communities as well. But that really comes down to the allocation for us. And you're going to need more companies like that who are willing to. And a combination with that is making sure that we are actually going to those centers to get the test done. So I wish I had a better answer why they're not. I don't have the control over that, but we're trying to actually have some control over that by getting the vaccination and going to our communities.
And just to piggyback on what Lamar said, we're coming. Trust and believe we're going to bring the vaccine to where it's needed most. This has been shown even with our testing sites. We're in the Black communities. We're in Riverdale. We're in South DeKalb. We're in SWATs. When we get the vaccine, we're going to be down there on the South side. We're coming to you. So once we get that allocation, I can promise as the president and co-founder of Viral Solutions, we'll have it right in your community for sure.
Thanks, Ron. All right, next question we have is, in terms of vitamins and any other supplements, what would you advise to help the body build natural immunity? For instance, I heard vitamin D is important.
I kind of want to address this. I think it goes way deeper than just vitamins or supplements. The majority of people that get coronavirus actually end up have a few symptoms and actually end up doing just fine. It's those who have comorbidities, like heart problems, hypertension, diabetes. Yes, there is a genetic component to that, but also there's a lifestyle component as well, which I think is a lot bigger than the genetic component. What do we put in our bodies on a daily basis? We can't go eat fast food all the time and take some vitamins and think we're going to be okay. It's going to be a lifestyle modification. It's really important what you put in your body. It's really important the physical activity you do. It's really important the mental aspect, the spiritual aspect. But those is a global thing of our overall health and well-being. If we're suffering from these comorbidities, your body is already strained. And so you add on coronavirus to that, your body can only handle so much. So it's more important to just focus on lifestyle modification through diet, through exercise, through mental wellness. That's going to help you in more than just the coronavirus, because people die from way more than just coronavirus. But I know it's a topic right now. So that's what I really focus on, not just worried about taking just vitamin D or vitamin and supplement, because that's not going to overall prevent it. But you just got to make your body as strong as possible so it can fight off anything that's thrown at it. You're on mute, Dr. Juan.
Sorry, my daughter was trying to join the panel, so I was trying to mute it to prevent that from happening. But we have a comment from someone who said, suggested that we contact our local officials, state representatives, and others, and let our voices be heard. I guess that comment could be applicable to both anyone who wants to be an advocate for communities of color, as well as instructing us at Viral Solutions, which we have been talking to our state representatives and everyone who's in power about getting these vaccines into our hands. So if you guys know anyone that's watching who wants to help facilitate getting us vaccines so we can get out there to the community, please do that. Help us get these vaccines. Any other questions? Please post them here. I have another comment. Thank you, Ashley and Clifton. We agree with that very much. I think I have addressed all of these questions. Last call for questions. Any Facebook questions? Any last words from our panelists? Clinical trial participants?
I want to thank 100 Black men for having us on. This is definitely a pleasure, helping us spread the word. Education is everything. So what you're not exposed to, you don't know. So thank you for helping us spread the exposure so everybody can be educated. Thank you, 100 Black men.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And good night.
Good night.